A lot of people have come to the defense of Bethesda over the last few years, believing that any push against Todd Howard and his army of yes men are nothing but grifters. Everyone is lying, and Bethesda is actually totally fine, and nothing there is wrong at all. This was the narrative for a long time, and people gaslighted themselves into believing that it was the truth because, well, how could anything else be true, right? I mean, it's Bethesda. They made Skyrim, Oblivion, the Fallout reboot games, and of course, Starfield. This can't be a company that is being torn apart from the inside out. It just can't be true, except in reality, it was. And the truth has actually come out now, and I really don't think Microsoft is happy knowing that their dirty laundry is being waved around in the open like this, and no less. By somebody they likely believed was one of those yes men in that army. So this brings us to Pete Hines. In case you don't know who this guy is, Pete Hines was in charge of running Bethesda for a really long time. Well, part of it anyways. He was the senior vice president of global marketing and communication, so yeah, pretty important job. Anyways, alongside Todd Howard, Pete Hines was kind of the other public face of the company too. A lot of people knew who this guy was. Remember when Bethesda would do their E3 conferences? Yeah, Pete was the guy who ran those things, and he was also the presenter at times too. Anyways, Pete has now left Microsoft and Bethesda. He's retired now. He's actually worked at Bethesda, if you can believe it, since he left college. So this guy was a lifetime worker and believer in Bethesda. Pete has been there practically for like everything you've played at Bethesda. Meaning if anyone knows what's going on at Bethesda right now, it's Pete Hines. So what happened? Well, nothing good. I gotta be real. You see, Pete did an interview after leaving Bethesda, and it's not looking good at all, guys. The very reason Pete left Bethesda, you may think, oh, it's because he worked his whole life there. He wanted to retire, and it was just his time. Well, yes, but actually no. It turns out Pete left because Microsoft has pretty much destroyed his and others' life's work. As PC Gamer reported here, Pete Hines says he left Bethesda because he didn't want to watch it being damaged, and a word I can't say on YouTube, unfortunately. So yeah, Pete just kind of spilled the beans here, guys, and it's not bad. It's bad, man. So Pete spoke to Fireside Chat Gaming about a lot of things. But the way that Pete spoke about it, it became very, very clear that Pete was somewhat forced to leave Bethesda, and this really wasn't his choice. Now, he doesn't call out Microsoft by name, mostly because he can't technically do so, but it's so very obviously who he's talking about here, considering that he worked at Bethesda before many of us were even born, and the only corporate overlords over Bethesda besides ZeniMax were, of course, Microsoft. Here's what Pete said, and I mean, he did not hold back. Here's what he said, guys. I was staying there because this place still needs me. I just hit a point of yes, it needs me. And I am powerless to do what I think needs to be done to run this place properly, to protect these people, to maintain what we work so hard to create, which is an incredibly efficient, well-run video game developer and publisher. That's part one, but now again, he doesn't say Microsoft, but come on, guys, this is very obvious. Microsoft obviously owns Bethesda now. They spend like, what, $7 billion just buying ZeniMax outright, so Bethesda has new overlords, as we all know. So the fact that Pete is out here saying that he was powerless to protect his people, you know, the Bethesda people, the IPs and the franchises we all love, like Elder Scrolls or I guess Fallout 2, yeah, it's kind of devastating to hear that what I and others have been theorizing for years is now, well, true. I always knew once Bethesda got bought, it was the beginning of the end. I got made fun of it for this, of course, but like usual, the truth eventually comes to light. And this is not good, guys, okay? Pete Hine had more to say, and here's what he said. And when I was unable to do what I thought my job should involve in continuing to have that place be, you know, if not the most efficient publisher in the game industry, it was way the F up there. And when I couldn't protect it, and I saw how it was getting damaged and broken apart and frankly mistreated, whatever word you want to use, I said I am not going to sit here and watch this happen right in front of me. So this makes you wonder, what exactly is going on behind these closed doors? But I can wager the answer is very simple. Corporate nonsense is likely what is killing Bethesda, and really all Xbox studios at this point. I mean, it's not surprising, even if it does end up sucking, right? Like, look how long it's taken one single Fable game to get made these days. We're like something close to almost a decade at this point, and who's to say it's even going to be great? Like, Gears of War even, that has been on ice for years. Sure, we finally got E-Day coming, but still, it's been years since the last one. Halo's a dumpster fire, man, which also used to be from one of the most well-oiled studios in existence. In, pre-Bungie, before everything that happened there did as well. And don't get me started on Obsidian Entertainment, and how Obsidian's push for ideology has ruined the Outer Worlds to the point that that franchise is now dead, and Avowed, well, that crashed and burned as well. But when I look at Bethesda, I see what I keep seeing in modern AAA Western gaming, which is rot. Pure, disgusting, putrid rot from top to bottom. Look, full disclosure, alright, I got a free code for Starfield on PS5 when the game released, and before some games journalist lies about me again saying that I don't get codes, here's your proof. I was just as surprised as you guys, but yeah, I got Starfield for free to review the game, which I have been doing between playing Crimson Desert myself. I'm still not done that game either. I put about maybe 7 or 8 hours into Starfield so far, and what I can confidently say after playing the opening and then some and getting into the groove of things and more, is that Starfield, honestly, is kind of everything wrong with modern AAA Western game development, and I unfortunately am not joking. Look, I'll get the positives of this game out of the way. I think the shooting is pretty good, and I like the way that some of the visuals look, not all, but positives where you can find them, I guess, and the sound design's good too, I gotta admit. The story has an interesting hook. You find this mysterious artifact, it calls out to you, and then you search the galaxy looking for the answer. Look, I get it, it's a captivating idea at least. Then there's the procedural generation exploration, however, which in my opinion is just dog water bad. I was honestly baffled, actually baffled by how poorly it was being implemented here. It's literally just, here's a barren planet with nothing in every direction, and you just scan the planet, and weird spore-looking enemies that are mindless monsters that you just shoot over and over again. There's the human characters as well. They look diverse and all that, because of course they do, but that's all they really are from what I really gathered. There was barely any nuance or anything interesting about anyone I met so far. Sarah was the main companion I kept with me, I guess. She's kind of like Liara from Mass Effect, but nowhere near as interesting. And the fact that the game has no intelligent alien species, a species that can speak and have their own spaceships, or maybe the game does have that, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, so I could be wrong, but from what I've seen anyways, it's so far just random monster aliens to shoot that kind of just feel pointless. I'm not gonna, that's just what it is. There's no Turians or Asari or Krogan beings in Mass Effect to speak with, which is a real bummer. And the general consensus I had playing Starfield was this, that it confirmed my greatest fears of Bethesda, which was that something was truly wrong and rotten at the core of Bethesda as a game developer after playing this. Because Starfield wasn't some fluke, right? It was this culmination of over 2 decades and then some of game development from what is largely considered one of the best AAA Western game developers to ever exist. They can't be denied. These people made Skyrim, they made the Fallout reboot games, and this was their future? The big amazing game that would usher in a new era? You're out of your mind, right? Starfield's just not that. And now seeing Pete Hines saying what he's been saying about how Bethesda has been getting misused and destroyed behind the scenes confirms that, to me anyways, there's something deeply unwell behind the scenes here. When I first went to New Atlantis and Starfield, I felt like I was being trolled. Never has a Bethesda city felt more lifeless and by design committee than New Atlantis did. How does Whiterun in Skyrim have more personality and love and care in it than New Atlantis, which you could fit multiple and then some Whiteruns into it? Starfield's that weird corpo slob art style that so many companies use where they try to be inoffensive to everyone, and they just kind of end up creating the worst looking thing imaginable, but that is what Starfield looks like to me. I feel bad, right? They sent me a code. Honestly, I probably just burned my bridge with Bethesda by saying this, but I have to be honest here. This is not the Bethesda I love, at all, but I don't think it's really Bethesda's fault, honestly. I think there's only one real culprit at the heart of this, because the vast majority of Bethesda is still ran by the same people. Well, mostly, I guess. Pete Hines is gone. But there's one new element that is ruining everything, and that seems to be to no one's surprise, but Microsoft themselves. I truly do believe that Microsoft's corporate slop, they're destroying the bejesus out of Bethesda when they got bought out. The likelihood is once Microsoft spent their billions of dollars buying everything like they do, the next obvious step is to then fill the place you just bought with people that you trust and know that they will make things the way that you want them to be. Meaning for these companies that were all well-oiled machines before this happened, they were now being filled to the brim with middle managers that are likely managing other middle managers that already existed at places like Bethesda. Imagine the pipeline of content is just that, right? A pipeline. And for years the content flowed through this pipeline with no obstructions. But Microsoft is like an unmovable sludge that somehow made its way into that pipeline. And now the content, the water, however you want to personify it, it can no longer flow through the pipe the way that it did before, making everything borderline impossible to get done now. Like if Sony PlayStation is having a massive problem with ideology like rot meets moronic live service pushes, which is absolutely what's destroying Sony as well, Microsoft is like all of that, plus all these companies are bought by Microsoft, are also being ran by yes men loyal to Microsoft that have no idea what they're doing either. It kind of reminds me of Strauss Zelnick, which is this guy on screen here. So if you don't know, Strauss is the CEO of Take-Two. That's the people who own Rockstar Games and stuff like that. You know, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead. There was an interview once where Strauss says that he didn't play video games at all despite running Rockstar from above, and he believes that this is a good thing because his job is not to know how video games work, but to simply hire the best people possible that money can buy and then get out of their way so they can do their jobs to get you the results that you need. This is why GTA 5, despite being ran by Strauss and his yes men, reached meteoric sales numbers, right? So too did Red Dead Redemption 2, because remember, Red Dead 2 is the 4th highest selling game of all time, by the way. Why I bring this up is simple, right? Because love him or hate him, Strauss Zelnick is at the very least not getting in the way of things, at least hopefully anyways. He's just a guy who signs the checks and makes sure that things run smoothly. Microsoft, however, they kind of feel like the opposite. They want to hire the people that they want, but they also want to make all the decisions, and they want to ensure that they are always in the way of how things get made because they now own the thing that's making things. But that's not how good content gets made. The last thing you want to do is get in the way of creativity, and I know this because I talk to game developers. And they always tell me how one of the major things that ruins games these days is that the business side of the equation, the ideology nonsense, the HR departments too, this all just keeps interfering with how the sauce gets made, or the games if you will, and that is why Bethesda is dying. They have the talent, they have the IPs, but they have Microsoft at the helm now, and Microsoft wants to be in control. Even if they don't know what they're doing, and it slows everything down and ruins all that it touches. In the last 10 years, mainline Bethesda has released 2 games. Fallout 76, a multiplayer always online live service version of Fallout, which reviewed horribly by the way, and Starfield. That's it. You can't even tell me with a straight face that what Bethesda has released in the past 10 years compares to anything they did in the previous 15 or 20. You can try, but you know that you're wrong. Just look at this, right? These are the mainline games that Bethesda released since 2000. You had Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Skyrim in the span of a decade or so. All massive successes, cultural phenomenons that changed the video game landscape forever, and nobody can deny that. Then after Fallout 4, a shift happened, right? Sure, they didn't get bought out until 2021, which means the first full mainline release under Microsoft was technically Starfield. So you tell me in the comments, is Starfield really the same quality of Oblivion, Skyrim, hell, even Fallout 3? I think we all know the answer, even if we don't like it, but we do. And that's the thing, right? Seeing Bethesda now versus what they used to be, I don't know. It's like seeing Gordon Ramsay suddenly being unable to know how to cook anything, and he barely knows how to even boil an egg now. But the writing was kind of on the wall. Like, look at this from October 2023. Bethesda was forced by Microsoft to report directly to their yes men, which is just messing everything up. And once I read you what is said here, I promise it's going to make Pete Hines' next words hit even harder. This is exactly what Microsoft is saying in 2023 on Bethesda's change in work structure as it reads here. ZeniMax will continue to operate as a limited integration entity led by Jamie Sletter, president and CEO. All ZeniMax development studios and ZeniMax central services teams will continue to report to Jamie to maintain and optimize current content development and production cycles. Also, to deepen our partnership and accelerate mutual learning, a number of ZeniMax leaders will now report to those Microsoft leaders with whom their work most closely aligns. This is a corporate way of saying you answer to me and nobody else. The point of this reorganization was apparently so Microsoft could avoid another Redfall situation, which is a game that did so poorly, it resulted in employees who worked on it mass exodusing the company following its release. Then, Pete Hines said this in his interview where he was waiting for Starfield to release, to where he said this: "I was waiting until after Starfield. I knew I was leaving the year before. Every time Todd Howard delayed Starfield, I thought, I'm here another 8 months." Pete resented his last years at Bethesda because, again, like I showed you, they were being torn apart by Microsoft. Is it really any wonder the moment that Microsoft demanded they answer directly to them and were not autonomous that Pete suddenly left? Yeah, I think it's very obviously connected. According to Pete Hines, Todd Howard was the only one keeping him from losing his mind amidst all of this, as Pete said here. Todd Howard was the only one who knew I was leaving. It's another reason I love that man. He showed up for me when I was just at my wit's end and got me through that. And got me out of there in a way that I still retained my sanity, which then makes you wonder just how bad is it now with Pete gone? Because Todd is pretty much now the public face of the company, for better and worse. There's no way Todd can really handle and control everything. I mean, sure, we know that Elder Scrolls 6 is in active development right now. But we also know that Elder Scrolls 6 has been rebooted many times already. Like, the writing has been there for a while now, like earlier this year, right? Bethesda's former lore master, who basically created everything the Elder Scrolls abides by, also left the company too. Kurt Coleman, as seen here, also ran from Bethesda as soon as he could as well, because he saw the studio and the company that he loved turning into another corpse slop disaster in the making. And yeah, he did want Elder Scrolls 6 to be Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it's not a spoiler since they're not doing this now, but originally Coleman's idea for Elder Scrolls 6 was that it was going to end its main story with the High Elves, the Atmer, basically winning in the end, ushering in a new warlike scenario over the entire series for an eventual Elder Scrolls 7. It didn't happen though, clearly, because again, the entire thing has been rebooted, and God knows what the main plot is now, probably something far safer and less exciting. Michael Kirkbride is seen here, who also works at Bethesda, said this: Kurt Coleman was the best thing that the Elder Scrolls ever had. His leaving will be the creative detriment of the Elder Scrolls 6, and as it says below, Coleman needed a change and he was not happy with Bethesda for a really, really long time, and I mean, who could blame them? I mean, Coleman even admits, as seen here, that following Skyrim, that Bethesda just ballooned in size. It stopped being about developers and became more of a business. A corporatized entity is probably a better way of putting it, but like, all of this sucks, right? But to hear that Pete Hines echo what Kurt Coleman also said is damning evidence months later, it's impossible to deny the absolute state of Bethesda right now. This confirms that it's a company heading towards a transformation, but I don't know if what we're going to get is what we're going to want. But the fact that people suspected this for so long, that others feared it and saw the warning signs, and now to have it be confirmed is kind of crazy. How bad does something need to get for one of your public faces of your company to outright state that he felt powerless to stop what's coming? But the most damning quote of all is the fact that Pete said Bethesda is now a part of something that is neither authentic nor genuine. Like, are you kidding me? Let that sink in for a second. That's real. For a man who spent a quarter of a century working on some of the biggest games ever made, to now turn around and just describe the modern version as inauthentic as in the company, that is nuts to do. Again, this is all because of greed and control, right? Microsoft bought Bethesda and then some for $7.5 billion in 2021. And sure, okay, at first, maybe the gaming media would celebrate it, they would call it a win. Xbox fans maybe saw it as a huge get too, because it obviously aligned with their platform of choice. Even the executives probably celebrated the win because they got bonuses. But if you ask me, what the executives at Microsoft were really celebrating was that Bethesda was going to soon transform into something beyond a studio for them. They were celebrating it because they were turning it into an asset, because the people at Microsoft knew that everything was about to change. And there's no game that makes that more obvious than, again, Starfield. Remember, they tried to market Starfield as the next game that would define a generation of RPGs. It was the next Skyrim, but what you got was something entirely different. Like, it's big, sure, it's an okay game. I mean, it's not terrible, but like, it lacks soul, come on. But all of this is because this is where the Xbox ecosystem as a whole comes into the story too. Because let's be real, guys, Starfield was no longer being released as a Bethesda game first anymore. No, you see, it was now going to be released as an Xbox Game Pass product first. A flagship release may remind you of what Game Pass was all about, and I mean, come on, look at how Starfield was even designed. The subscription ecosystem that it was designed to feed into absolutely altered how that game was going to be designed at its core. And I can almost guarantee you the discussion around Starfield internally was no longer about how we can make the best RPG possible. Instead, its design pivoted to how do we maximize the engagement metrics, how long are players going to stay subscribed to play this, how many hours are they logging in, how much content can we stretch till the next monthly renewal so we still get our money. And I mean, you may say, oh, you just don't like Game Pass. I mean, alright, bet, I guess. So explain to me why then in 2025 from TechSpot.com here, that Pete Hines again said as seen here that he admitted that the Game Pass model insufficiently compensates those who make games on that platform. Again, the same guy who just admitted that Bethesda is being mismanaged and led to his early retirement. Are we really going to start coping now given what has been said already? Or are those still clinging to this false dream finally going to see the truth for what it is? Like as TechSpot says here, Pete Hines also suggested that the subscription model may have influenced Microsoft's decision decision to close Tango Gameworks and Arcane's Austin studio. That's the Hi-Fi Rush people and the Redfall people respectively, because Pete believed that Microsoft was draining these studios for corporate gain. He even admits in that same article that 3 million players is not the same as 3 million copies sold, and he's right, by the way. Yet how often do we see companies use that train of thought to mask their own inadequacies? For example, look at this when Assassin's Creed Shadows released. Ubisoft claims that 2 million players, not copies sold, 2 days after release, right? Because Shadows was available via Ubisoft Play day one on a subscription service as well. You see what I mean? It's all to mask failure when you have to. This is what these companies do these days, and Pete Hines is telling you that that is what they do as well. That they are eating these companies that you love and leaving nothing but the bones when they're done. It's a disastrous way to make future content is what it is. As Pete said here via TechSpot as well, he suggested that the whole Microsoft Game Pass design mantra doesn't work and all it does is create tension and lack of compensation. Which I've been saying that for years, that Game Pass would never really work, and we know that it doesn't because the guy who spearheaded it, Phil Spencer, where is he right now? Oh right, as The Verge reported like a month or two ago, right? Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond, that's his successor, they both got forcibly removed from Microsoft earlier this year, didn't they? Wow, I wonder why that happened. It's almost as if the narrative is not even falling apart at this point. It's cratering and splintering like a ship in a storm, guys. This entire thing is a mess, and I think while sure Bethesda could and will continue to exist in some capacity, it might just end up being Bethesda in name only. They haven't released a Game of the Year contender since Skyrim, and Xbox in general as a first-party publisher hasn't had a single first-party game release that has been nominated nor won Game of the Year for over 10 years and then some now. At what point do we not realize there is something that needs to happen here? Obviously, Microsoft won't just give Bethesda back somehow, but they need to remember that the name of a company can only take you so far down the road. But it's the people within it that really matters. Obsidian used to be great, Bethesda too, same with Rocksteady and more. But when the people who made those things special end up leaving, all you're really left with is a name on a door. But a name means nothing if it can't be backed up with the greatness that put it there in the first place. This is how the games that were once art start feeling like products instead. And they become content pipelines, because what do you mean the people who made Skyrim and Fallout 3, who were famous for handcrafted worlds, were just going to ship a game that was all about procedural generation now? A studio once known for like their deep RPG systems is now just delivering streamlined experiences that are built around accessibility and ESG now. Like, how pathetically brutal is it to know that a studio once defined by their creative risks is now just existing inside of the largest corporation on earth? And that, dear viewers, should concern anyone who both loves and wants to see the future of Western RPGs thrive, because this is bleak. And ultimately what we're seeing and hearing is something we may not wanted to know, but in the first place, because it's clear now that Pete Hines didn't leave Bethesda because he was too tired or old. He left because he couldn't stop what was happening or what comes next. Pete admitted he stayed as long as he possibly could to try to protect the studio's culture, but eventually realized that he had no more power to do so anymore. Like, think about that, guys. One of the highest ranking executives in Bethesda felt powerless. And if someone at that level couldn't stop that transformation, what chance do the developers there have now? Which brings us to the uncomfortable question that no one in the industry really wants to ask, which is that if Bethesda, the studio that gave us Skyrim, can lose its identity inside corporate consolidation like this, I guess, then really what hope does any studio have at this point? Because what Pete Hines just revealed isn't just about Bethesda. It's about the future of AAA gaming itself, if you ask me. And if this trajectory continues, the next generation of legendary studios, they may not collapse really with anything but a bang. But they're going to disappear slowly instead, like very quietly, swallowed by the very corporations that promised to save them. And that is what Pete Hines wanted us to know, so I thank him for blowing the horn to tell the rest of us what's going on. I'd love to speak to the guy sometime and, pick his brain, because this is horrible. We all deserve better, and Pete, he deserved far better than this for everything he sacrificed too. I'm sorry that this happened, Pete. I really do. I just wish that we could stop what comes next. But what do you think? Let me know. Subscribe if you'd like to. Don't lose hope, guys, okay? But we do need to be realistic here. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.